One of the unique selling points of 2013's Beware the Batman is the way the writers of the show decided to forego the usual well-known rogues and instead gave the spotlight to more obscure Batman villains. Characters like Anarchy, Magpie and Professor Pig, while lesser known, had made multiple appearances over the years, but there's a whole subclass of villains that this show used that were incredibly obscure. The writers mined a specific miniseries, Dan Slott and Ryan Sook's Arkham Asylum Living Hell, to populate their world with foes for Batman. Characters like Lunkhead, Junkyard Dog and Doodlebug all debuted in that series and were featured in Beware the Batman, albeit in minor roles. One other villain from that series who would have a bigger role in Beware the Batman was the deranged Humpty Dumpty. However, he wasn't very much like his comic book counterpart. Humpty Dumpty debuted in Arkham Asylum Living Hell No. 2, published in 2004. Humphrey Dumpler, as he was unfortunately named, had a very specific fixation on fixing broken things. When a mirror was broken in Arkham, Warden Jeremiah Arkham had Dumpler repair it to reveal his worst fear. One of the inmates had got their hands on a huge shard of glass, which could be used as a deadly weapon. As a reward for his good work, Dumpler requested a room transfer to become cellmates with the newest inmate, Warren White, a man who had committed an act of fraud so colossal that it had impacted thousands of lives. He pleaded insanity, thinking he'd get off easy, but a vengeful judge sentenced him to be treated at Arkham Asylum. White wasn't insane when he entered the asylum. In fact, there's a running joke that everyone thinks he's just the worst person they've ever met, including the Joker, yikes. But by the series' end, he has completely gone over the deep end and become a supervillain, the Great White Shark. Dumpler feared that this might happen, so he took pity on White and attempted to fix him with friendship. Now you might be thinking that Dumpler sounds like a kind soul, so what's he doing in Arkham, a facility for the criminally insane? Well, he took his obsession with fixing things way too far. All of his life he felt he had been cursed with bad luck. As a child, his family's home was accidentally demolished, his beloved pet dog was run over, and both of his parents tripped and broke their necks on Christmas Day. Young Humphrey was sent to live with his mean old grandmother who lived in a novelty oversized shoe. Don't forget that this is Gotham, home to novelty massive props, and I guess some of them were repurposed into homes. And Dumpler became obsessed with the idea of fixing his bad luck. His fixation kicked in over a small thing. A train he needed to catch didn't stop at his station, but it was enough to tip him over the edge. So Dumpler decided to read every book he could to understand why the train was against him. At night, he went to the yard where the trains were housed, and he took its brake system apart and put it back together again. Now that he knew how it worked, perhaps it would reciprocate and try to understand him. No. Instead, the train's brakes failed, causing a gigantic crash that injured dozens. And Dumpler thought to himself, "Thank goodness the train didn't stop for me," and that his luck had changed, completely oblivious that it was his tinkering that had caused the accident. Feeling emboldened, Dumpler set out to repair other things that he felt were against him. An elevator, traffic lights, even a cash machine that had eaten his bank card. And all of them would go on to malfunction. He was caught on CCTV and dubbed the Super Saboteur of Gotham, but he wasn't trying to break things or cause mischief, he was trying to make things better. Dumpler planned to leave town via boat, using the clock tower visible from his bedroom window to track the time. But when he got to the waterfront, he found the boat had already left. The clock tower must have been off by an hour, he decided, so he set out to mend that too. But he caused immeasurable damage when the minute hand of the clock flew off, causing a devastating chain reaction across town. Batgirl tracked him down because he was the only person in town that had checked out books from the Gotham Library about trains, elevators, roadways, banking and clocks. Within minutes of meeting him, it became clear to her that he wasn't a malicious saboteur, he was just deeply unwell. When she visited his home, she made a gruesome discovery. Dumpler had murdered his abusive grandmother, cutting her open and stitching her back together again. He felt that she had the potential to be a kind person. There was just something fundamentally broken inside of her and he wanted to correct it. He couldn't understand that he had killed her. And that's the reason why most inmates in the asylum kept a wide berth of him. He was genuinely a kind person, but he didn't understand the harm he was doing to people when he tried to help them. He was so kind and generous that he'd offer help without hesitation, and it would often go very wrong. Humpty Dumpty hasn't made very many appearances outside of Living Hell. He can sometimes be seen in the background in a large group of villains as an Easter egg, a very intentional pun I suspect, for fans of Batman villains. Writer Paul Dini used Dumpler in issue 7 of his Batman Streets of Gotham series. In this issue, it's Christmas and Dumpler has escaped from Arkham. After stealing broken donated toys from a police charity drive, he was tracked to an abandoned orphanage. When Batman and Robin confronted him, they realised that he had been gathering up the toys for the children in the orphanage. However, all was not as it seemed. These children were dead. Dumpler hadn't killed them, he had stumbled upon their corpses and was horrified by what had been done to them. He was trying his best to fix them. He knew there was nothing he could do to save them deep down, but he felt he had to keep trying, just in case he was wrong. Later in the series, Batman arranged for Dumpler to be put on a work release program where his unique fixation could be put to good use fixing bicycles, alongside Lockup, who acted as a security consultant for Wayne Enterprises, which sounds like a recipe for disaster to me. But this was a great example of Batman's ethos of compassion and rehabilitation. It's not always about punching the villains and throwing them in Arkham. He intends for them to get better and lead happy, productive lives. If you're at all familiar with Beware the Batman, then you'll know that their version of Humpty Dumpty is quite different. He does have a tragic element to his character in that he was forced to go into hiding because he attempted to do the right thing. But at the same time, he's far more sinister. Their Humpty Dumpty debuted in the episode Broken. He was a genius accountant who worked for gangster Tobias Whale. He was persuaded to testify against Whale by Marion Grange and James Gordon. But on the way to court, a missile was fired at the police van that had transported Dumpler, and he was seriously wounded. Batman states that the injuries from the explosion drove Dumpler mad, and the last time anyone saw him, he had escaped from police protective custody and gone into hiding. Years later, the people that were involved in that fateful day started going missing. Marion Grange, Jim Gordon, Tobias Whale, and Whale's henchman, Joseph Crimple, nicknamed Icepick Joe, were all kidnapped by Dumpler. He encased them in a shell that looked like a toy soldier, evoking the old Humpty Dumpty nursery rhyme and the king's men who were supposed to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but he had corrupted it. The shell was also a bomb that would obliterate the people that Dumpler blamed for destroying his life. He had tried to do the right thing by testifying against Whale, but since that day everything had gone wrong. Whale still walked the streets and the officials that were supposed to take care of him almost got him killed. This version of Humpty Dumpty is more of a horror character, a nightmare version of a beloved character from a nursery rhyme out for revenge. He's only really interested in hurting the people who hurt him. Note that when he invades the Gordons' home, he leaves Barbara unharmed, although a little shaken up. He's not trying to fix society or help other people, he's trying to fix his own life. Maybe with these people out of the way, he could get back some normalcy. But let's be honest, that's highly unlikely. Batman was able to deactivate the bombs and put an end to Dumpler's game of toy soldiers, but in the chaos, Dumpler got away. He tricked Batman into thinking that he had leapt from the building to his doom, but in reality it was a decoy. The real Humpty Dumpty was still out there, and while he may have lost the battle, his war was far from over. He turned up a final time in the second half of the series during the episode Games, where Batman, Katana, Tobias Whale, Jim Gordon and Marion Grange awakened to find themselves in a lethal escape room of sorts. Each member of the group has been given a card to represent themselves, and each card acts as the answer to the deadly mysteries he puts them through. At first glance this might sound like a scheme fit for the Riddler, but the mystery isn't really so much the puzzles, it's the event that linked the 5 participants. While working for Tobias Whale, Dumpler became aware of a ship's captain, Ernie Krosky, who had been tricked into smuggling weapons into Gotham by Whale. Katana, who had been working undercover in the League of Assassins at the time, was the one who loaded the weapons onto his ship, hoping to track them to their destination for the CIA. Batman had informed Gordon of the weapons being smuggled into the city. Gordon, unable to tie the crime to Whale, settled for arresting the clueless Krosky, and Grange threw the book at him. Humphrey was outraged at the fact that these supposed heroes, and Whale, all knew that Krosky was just a patsy, and they stood by and let him rot in prison. They should have done something, and the fact that they didn't means they deserve to die. Batman points out an obvious flaw in Humphrey's logic. He also knew what was going on. Why didn't he do something to save Krosky? Humphrey's biggest mistake, however, was assuming that Krosky was as broken as he was. Krosky had no interest in killing anyone. All he wanted to do was be reunited with his wife and daughter. This infuriated Humphrey, who tried to kill them with a massive cannon. There's that obsession with the nursery rhyme poking its head up again, which is not an effective way of executing a group of people in a small room. Batman pursued Humphrey and knocked him into a room of his own traps, causing him to fall into a pit. We don't see Humphrey again, but Batman states that the police will be able to get him out and take him to prison before he wakes up. And it is deliciously ironic that both of his episodes end with a fall, much like his namesake. So this version of Humpty Dumpty generally has very little in common with his obscure comic book counterpart. Where the comic book original is a sad, confused man who is trying to do good, but invariably can't help but make things worse, Beware the Batman's Humpty Dumpty is a bitter, vengeful fool. He wasn't the kind soul lost in his own misunderstandings. He was a damaged man who thought the world owed him a repair. Where the comic book Dumpler tried to fix broken things and broke them by accident, the animated Dumpler knew what he was doing. His vengeance wasn't a cry for help, it was a bomb with a ticking clock, an inescapable death trap. And he perfectly demonstrates that in Gotham, broken things rarely get put back together again. More often than not, they just keep falling. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Friday to talk about Batman the Animated Series' take on corruption, and how there was only one corrupt cop, Two-Face's flunky, Gil Mason. And next Monday I'll dip back into the world of 2004's The Batman to shine the spotlight on a strong adaptation of one of Batman's D-list villains. We're going to be talking about Firefly. Hope to see you then.